Immediately starting off with a cough. Okay, hi. My name is Eden. It's like 7-ish in the morning. I got home at midnight last night after seeing Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, which is a movie that I thought I was going to fervently dislike and only went to see because I managed to get the tickets for $5 with my theater credits. And I think it has driven me mad, but not in the way that it intends to, based on its trailers. So welcome to the world's most insane, unhinged, mental, and verbal breakdown of this movie and what it did to me, because somebody needs to hear it. There will be no cuts in this video. I will probably say and and like a lot, and maybe even disassociate for a full minute. We will find out. But I need someone to understand what I'm going through. So, if you know nothing about this movie, or you have only seen a trailer of this movie, and you, like me, don't pay attention to internet discourse because I don't use social media. The closest things to social media that I use is that I post on a letterbox and a Substack ever so occasionally. I guess I'll link that down below. But the general vibe that I can ascertain is that everybody had a very similar reaction to me, which is that Wuthering Heights, this movie, is being marketed as a sexual romance. It had a Valentine's Day release date, and it is based on a book from 1847 by Emily Bronte, which is explicitly about, not being a romance. The book is romantic insofar as it is about the romantic movement that arrived in Europe in the mid-19th century. The romantic being the idea, basically, of things that humans cannot quantify or explain, sort of the feeling that you get just by being alive and questioning the meaning of life and questioning the meanings of the things around you, like trees and the skies and love. All that to say that this book has sprinklings of love in it, but it is love insofar as love drives you to mania and revenge and terror and insanity. So already the tone is completely off in the marketing, and then there is the fact that the main character, Heathcliff, is played by Jacob Elordi, who is tall and is also white. Those are his defining features. Heathcliff, in the book, I counted 36 different times where he is explained as being non-white, non-English, speaking with an accent, and probably from a country or origin that would deem him unchristian. So those are all markers that are ignored by this movie by casting a white person as Heathcliff. But you guys, here's the thing. The movie is really good. But it's also terrible. I have never seen a movie in my life. In my entire life, I have seen movies that are good adaptations but bad movies. I have seen movies that are bad adaptations but good movies. I have never seen a movie where its quality as a film is inversely proportional to its quality as an adaptation, and it's driving me mad. The cinematography in this movie is some of the best that I have seen in the past, 2 years, since maybe seeing Nosferatu on film. The sound design is incredible, except after a while, the musical interlude sort of got to me, but the first, 3 times that you see or hear a Charlie XCX song, that's my cat. He's here to rant about the movie, too. The first 3 or 4 times that the musical interludes show up, they are really well done, and then they keep showing up. But other than that, the sound design is fantastic. My cat just locked himself in. Again, we're going crazy over here. The sound design and cinematography are amazing. The actors are working with what they have. Like I said, some of them are miscast, meaning our main two. But, ooh, I almost feel like I want to start over, but I'm not going to start over. The comedic beats are perfect. There's a lot of times where I laughed at this movie, and as a movie that is trying to be romantic and sexual, it's working. Like, there are a lot of genuinely well-delivered romantic lines. There's a lot of genuinely well-delivered kinky lines. This movie would do great as an AO3 fanfiction. But all of that is contradictory to the fact it is a Wuthering Heights adaptation. And the reason it drives me crazy is that if it was even remotely slightly closer to the book, it would be absolutely brilliant. Because Heathcliff in this movie is played by a white actor. But you know who isn't played by a white actor? The characters of Edgar and Nellie, who are two characters defined by their jealousy and inadequacy in the face of Heathcliff. This movie would be so far enhanced if Heathcliff was played by a person of color, because then it would make sense that they see him as the one person of color who gets treated by Kathy as practically godlike, whereas they constantly get shafted and she just kind of has to tolerate them in her life. There is also the fact that the character of Nellie is played as almost explicitly villainous, sympathetic, but like constantly antagonistic. And in the book, the idea that Nellie is an antagonist in the book is more subtextual implication. We see how she cares about Catherine. It's just a matter of, and this is really a theory that was established in the 1950s, so 100 years after the book was written, that Nellie might be worse than she seems, because she, as the head maid, has control over a lot of circumstances that happen to people in the book. But this movie plays that all as explicit, which is dumb because Heathcliff is white. But if you made Heathcliff a character of color, then you would get more into Nellie's head as she defines Heathcliff as being treated better than her despite being an actively terrible person. And speaking of Heathcliff as a terrible person, Heathcliff, the cinematography and framing of this movie, again, are Oscar-worthy. They're fantastic. And they do a really good job of framing Jacob Elordi as absolutely monstrous. He, crawls on his knees. You see him scale buildings in interesting ways. It's kind of crazy to me that this came out 4 months after Frankenstein, because it almost feels like Emerald Fennell saw Frankenstein before she shot it, because he is being framed in such a similar way. And again, there are centuries of academia establishing Heathcliff as a monster. The way he is written in the book is very similar to the way that Frankenstein's creature or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde would be written. They are monsters. They are inhuman things. But the thing that makes Heathcliff feel inhuman to everyone around him is his difference in physical features, is his difference in accent, is his difference in nationality, is his difference in possibly religion. So he's shot perfectly correctly, but he's not the correct race. Everything about this movie would be enhanced if he wasn't whitewashed. Again, there are a lot of reviews that say Dev Patel was a missed opportunity because he is similarly, look what you did to me, Emerald Fennell. I can't talk. He is similarly tall and has vastly different features from everybody else in the movie. There's a couple things like that. So Kathy, I was very confused by the way that time passed in this movie. You don't see any markers of it until the end, where there is a 1 year later. And when Heathcliff vanishes, spoilers, by the way, when Heathcliff vanishes, we are told he's gone for 5 years, which is different than the book where he's gone for 3 years. Also, it seems like they aged up the characters, and I don't mean that they aged up the actors, because Margot Robbie is way too old for this role. And I say that knowing she looks young for her age, but she still cannot convincingly play Kathy, who is supposed to be like 16 to 19. But then they refer to her as a spinster, and I'm like, okay, how much time has passed since their childhoods? Because Margot Robbie has a pretty big age, not pretty big, but has an age difference between her and Jacob Elordi. And then also when they refer to her as a spinster, it feels strange because the average life expectancy in the time of Wuthering Heights was 25. That's about when Emily Bronte died. That's when, again, spoilers, Kathy and Heathcliff die in the book at about that age. So it's just incredibly strange to me. I want the timeline of exactly how old these people are supposed to be, because Margot Robbie is acting like a 16 to 19-year-old, and she does not look like one in general, and she especially doesn't look like one in this movie, where she is stressed all of the time, so age shows on her face more often. I had more points than this, Hunter. Hunter's my cat. He's still standing behind the camera. You see what I mean? Do you see what I mean when I say this movie has driven me to the brink? I am on a floor at 7 a.m. The craziest thing about this movie is that I liked it. And the even worse thing about it is that I liked it for reasons completely contradictory to what it was aiming for. Emerald Fennell, girl, what are you doing here? Because Emerald Fennell's entire justification for the whitewashing of Heathcliff was, whoop, that was my cat again. Emerald Fennell's entire justification for the casting of Heathcliff was that she wrote it the way that she saw it when she was reading the book as a teenager. So teenage Emerald Fennell must not have been a very good reader then, because she missed a lot of lines. She missed the entire physical description of the main character, in fact. Again, 36 counts. I can source them. But Emerald, A, why didn't you just write a fan fiction? B, why didn't you just change the names? I was thinking about this. I made that comparison earlier to Nosferatu cinematography-wise. But also, the story of Nosferatu is that in the 1920s, the filmmakers were... Hunter? The filmmakers were unable to get the rights to Dracula. So they figured they had made it different enough that they could just call it something else and not be sued for infringement of Dracula. Again, looking at my cat. And Nosferatu is of Dracula's ilk and gets compared to other adaptations of Dracula, but by the time we have reached 2024 with that modern adaptation, we have also made Nosferatu its own identity. It has its own spin-offs. It has its own ideas. It has its own characters. If you wanted to do this with Wuthering Heights, why did you call it Wuthering Heights? And no, you cannot excuse it by the fact that you put it in quotation marks. This is not Wuthering Heights. There is a good movie here. If it wasn't called Wuthering Heights, if these characters weren't called Catherine and Heathcliff, this would be like a 4-star production. 5-star even. I don't believe in numerical ratings for movies. I only do it on Letterboxd because it makes them easy to sort. But the point is, it would have really stuck with me. I want to own this movie, but I never want to associate it with the book that it's trying to draw a parallel to. You could have renamed it. You could have said, I grew up reading Wuthering Heights, and this idea spawned out of that, but I wanted to do something radically different. And that would have been fine if it wasn't called Wuthering Heights. Everyone would have been like, you're so well read. And I see the parallels here, but I also see your own individual style in it. But instead, it's called Wuthering Heights. And I feel so bad for a generation of people who may see this movie, considering how much money it's making, and associate this with the book, and then either be disappointed because it's not where the book ends up, if they end up reading the book, or have a completely different misconception of the book, which kind of screws with Emily Bronte's legacy a bit and what she was trying to refer to. She was trying to talk about this man who grew mad from the racism that he experienced, and you cut out the racism and you inflicted it on other characters, which is insane, by the way, because Edgar and Nellie are rich and rational. And it feels icky now that Catherine chooses an absolute lunatic, an impoverished, insane, abusive man over them, especially if you romanticize it in that fashion. Catherine and Heathcliff are both bad for each other. And if you're going to play this movie as a romance, if you're going to ignore what Emily Bronte wanted to do and make your weird, romantic, psychosexual Wuthering Heights, she did it about as best as possible, because the entire point is that this romance ruins both of them. They are terrible to each other and for each other and to everyone else. But that could be a good point. But then, that means that you have made it so that this idea that you are romanticizing of these two people who are terrible to each other is still better for your protagonist than two completely rational people of color who like her. Do you see now? Do you see how that reads to a modern audience, especially an audience of color? Emerald Fennel, if your idea was to interpret Wuthering Heights the way a teenager would, then you have stripped that fantasy for every person of color who watches your movie. Because they only get to see themselves as second choice. They only get to see themselves as antagonistic. And they don't get to see themselves as antagonistic in the sympathetic way that Heathcliff does, because you destroyed all the subtext about Nellie. And you got rid of all the actual text about Heathcliff. Also, sorry, one more thing. She deleted the brother. In the book, Kathy has a brother, and the brother is the one who is terrible to Heathcliff. Whereas here, we decided to make the father more abusive. So you have lost the parallel of the fact that Heathcliff chooses Kathy, in part because she is kind to him, but also in part because she is the only person who physically resembles him. The Lintons, her family, are established as being super blonde and pale and blue-eyed, except for Kathy. And Heathcliff, as the one person of color around, sees her and attaches to her specifically because she has darker features. And regardless of the weird incestuous vibes that comes with, it puts him in stark rivalry with her brother, and that is why he is treated so badly. But you took that away, and you gave her a brother, and you killed him, and you named him Heathcliff, and she names him Heathcliff after that dead brother. And if you were going to play into the romance more, and lower the incestuous tones of the book more, then why did you do that? Her naming him Heathcliff is a good idea. It is played later for why she feels so possessive of him. But it also constantly comes with but that's her brother then. Emerald Fennel, you've ruined me. You've ruined me so much I forgot my next point. I told you they'd be disassociating. I remember now. Heathcliff is characterized explicitly, in words, as a pet. Imagine how that would play if he was a person of color. Imagine how that would play with the fact that the first referrals in order, he is referred to as an it, a pet, and a beast. Why would she feel ownership over Heathcliff? Why would we view Kathy as a bad person? If he was a person of color, this movie would be infinitely better regardless of how much it played into the romance. Be an infinitely better adaptation of Wuthering Heights. As is, it's a terrible adaptation of Wuthering Heights. But it is a fantastic movie on its own, and I cannot deal with that disconnect. Because again, they are interlinked. There is no way to extricate them from one another. I think it does interesting things with the character of Isabella. I think it places her into a pet role, into the idea that she is destroyed by this infatuation with Heathcliff. But if a man of color had done that, it would play even more into the gothic horror of it. You made Kathy blonde. You made her too old. You made Heathcliff non-POC. You made Nellie and Edgar POC. You were so close. And each inch closer to the adaptation made it an infinite abyss farther. And I don't know how to deal with that. Okay. I think that's everything. Can I say go see Wuthering Heights? Maybe only if you got a discounted price like I did. If you can mooch a ticket off of your friends. Don't give Emerald Fennell your money, but also please enjoy the cinematographic experience. You know? It's so incredibly strange to me. I actually find it insulting. I feel like I had one or two more points, and maybe I'll put them in a Substack article. Again, link down below. I will have scripted content coming soon. I have a podcast coming out. I will make more feature appearances on my brother's channel, The Ponderer. But in the meantime, I will be on the floor with my phone set on a stack of books, with my cat trying to open the door, mentally spiraling about the experience of Wuthering Heights.